friends, and so they're always having conversations when they're doing.
Can you look at the camera?
Begin.
And here we.
That's sort of what I was going for, but it
That's
doesn't
what
really
I thought.
make sense the whole thing is on camera.
Welcome back to the Dr. Z Show.
What
gonna
if
talk-
I did that every time? The small bits that you add make
Yep.
it your own. So Jacob has a story apparently.
Okay, so the other day we were Christmas shopping in Target, and we were just loudly commenting about stuff, and we ran into
As one does.
couple.
Target.
Yeah, we ran into this couple, just talking about holiday stuff, whatever. And I mentioned that I was looking for a job, and so
Well, and they just, had slipped into the conversation that, oh yeah, like, we've got a side hustle that we're looking to make full time,
yeah, the way that they phrased it, they made it sound like they worked for an actual company that did internet business stuff, and I had
Spoiler alert.
It
Yeah.
was an MLM.
yeah,
Yep.
and I knew about this other company. I had met this
MLM? Wait, what's an MLM?
multi-level marketing pyramid scheme.
Oh, okay.
MLM is another word for it. Speaking of which, I'm designing a necromancer in my D&D campaign.
I'm gonna interrupt you because you interrupted your own story.
Yes,
Right
wait,
before we got on record, Jacob said about how we have stopped interrupting each other's stories. He interrupted his own story. And so I had to interrupt his story, interrupting his own story to tell him.
Okay. But real quick, I'm designing a necromancer named Emma Lems who has a pyramid that she that she's like at the top of, and she has all of these undead minions.
It's a really good thing that Shields is your DM because any other DM would be like,
Oh, no. I'm not designing that as a character. I'm designing that as a villain for the campaign that I'm running.
oh, okay, that's worse.
Okay, anyways, so this couple, I had met a guy who did what it sounded like they were describing.
Yeah, they totally made themselves sound like they were doing like SEO or some kind of other traffic optimization.
I also don't know what that means. I'm very
Yes.
unfamiliar with acronyms.
Search engine optimization.
Okay.
And I knew a guy who they owned a business that helped trucking companies find the best paths to different things and stuff like that. So that's what I thought that they were talking about.
Well, also-
there's lots of tech startups out here.
And they seemed interested in the fact that Jacob was an electrical engineer, which is not relevant to any MLM, I don't think.
Yeah.
No, that's just how they get you. Is they're like, oh, that's so interesting. Tell me more about yourself. Like by getting you to open up, they get you to trust them.
Yeah. So I went and met with them for what I thought was a job interview of sorts, and then it wasn't. And yeah, it was pretty great because when the takeaway from it was I was hoping that all the signs were there for it being what it ended up being, but I was just hoping that somehow it wasn't, like just in case. And when I came home, Abby was like, "You're so naive."
So now I am in 100% agreement with your wife. Like,
He wants to see the best in
if
people.
you were blind, someone could sell you a pair of glasses, like convincing you that you need that. You actually, funnily enough, you have that in common with Claire. So there's like a thing here now.
Yeah, where our spouses are the the cynical ones who protect us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is the most accurate statement you've ever made in your life.
Also,
Here's-
while I'm
Wait, no,
Well,
before,
no,
this is
hold
so
on, hold on.
important. This is so
while I'm
important.
comparing you to Claire, your faces do the same thing when you laugh too hard. They get really red, but only like right here, like only here, nowhere else, except just right here.
Thank you for that. So this is the part that like literally nobody's gonna believe is that I had the exact same thing happen to me in a Target. Like
Oh my god!
literally
Amazing.
small talk in a Target with this woman. and like she casually brought it up, made it sound like a legit thing, and then I like went to meet with her, and it was fucking pyramid scheme, and I was like, should have seen this coming.
So also the takeaway was they name dropped their
Upline.
their senior partners, and I looked them up, and thankfully the unofficial Amway wiki exists and listed them as diamond members of Amway. And then the other thing they name dropped was they said that they got into it because of some high
Abby shaking her head in the background. It's so good.
some high up Washington businessman who had helped them start their business. So I was thinking that maybe this was like a Shark Tank thing, like investors looking for entrepreneurs investing in their own businesses. Like
Okay, the only thing that's a Shark Tank thing is Shark Tank. Like, there are no other Shark Tank things. There is just Shark Tank.
Except for Shark Tank, and then like the country that it's in that's not America. Like that's not the default one. Like Shark Tank, Australia.
yeah,
that is also
the Shark Tank brand. So they name dropped that guy, and so then when I looked up the guy who started Amway,
How did
It
you
was-
remember all this? Did you like write names down?
then, okay, so then Abby
Well,
read today.
I had warned Jacob in advance to be hyper vigilant and to check signs of MLMs.
Of course.
And then he came home and he was like, "It doesn't seem like an MLM." And then he said a bunch of things, and I was like, "It seems exactly like an MLM."
It is an MLM.
Remember
Yeah.
remember when I was looking for my first job? I think I was
Yes.
still in high school, and vector marketing. And I was like, this
knew-
is fucking shady as shit.
I knew it was going to be Vector.
Yep.
Because Vector targets high schoolers and Amway targets young adults.
And I was like, fuck that. I'm going to deliver pizzas, which ended up being a great plan.
Yeah.
This means okay
Yeah. We're not those people.
for future reference. Because we have to say that now, which is ridiculous.
So
So takeaway, you joined a pyramid scheme.
no. Takeaway is I accepted a book and found out that pre-interviews are just a form of grooming, which was
Yep.
really scary. Because they didn't want my resume. They didn't want anything from
Yeah, I
me.
was going to say you didn't know that, but everything that you have said in the story clearly explains that you did not, in fact, know that.
See, the thing is, the only other time that I've ever been in a situation like this was in my freshman year. There was a girl I had a crush on, and she texted me and was like, "Hey, like, come over, like, I wanna
Yeah,
talk about
I
something."
remember the story.
And-
Oh, God, this is a great story.
Yeah, and I
It
was
so
like,
good.
"Oh, sweet."
She had a boyfriend, though, didn't she? Was this a...
yes, she did,
Yeah, no, this is the same girl. Okay.
but he was on a mission, so it was like,
So,
So-
it was like, oh,
no,
God.
yeah, like who knows? Just, I feel terrible saying now, but like at the time I was
No,
like,
yeah, it's okay.
okay.
On the
You're human.
owl.
So she texts me to come over, and then she sits me down in front of her computer and makes me watch this PowerPoint about a pyramid scheme, and like it looked like everything about the graphics. I was just like, oh my gosh, it's a pyramid scheme. My parents have warned me about these for years.
I remember, and the reason I remember the story so vividly is I remember we were on Skype and we were playing League of Legends.
Yeah.
We played League of Legends like all
like
the
right
fucking time.
after.
And no, we were on Skype. We were playing
Oh,
League
no,
of Legends,
yeah.
and you were like, "I have to go," and I was like, "Oh, where are you going?" And he was like, "Maybe it's a date," and I was like, "Okay, like sure." And then you came back, like we didn't, and then we didn't talk. And then like the next day, you got on Skype to play League of Legends, and you were like, "Oh my God, it's a pyramid scheme." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "The date. It wasn't a date. It was a pyramid scheme." And I was like, "Okay."
So
Okay.
yeah, adventures in being recruited. But I was a little proud that I got recruited by like the original pyramid scheme. Like Amway is just
Oh, I was like, where?
they're so they're very notorious as just being like,
They are the OGs.
yeah,
You are
so
original pyramid scheme material.
yeah, OP. Original poster,
Oh
overpowered.
no.
Original pyramid scheme.
All right, so we're not here to spend 10 minutes talking about Jacob's adventures in getting recruited into pyramid schemes or dating. We're dating to get into pyramid schemes.
Dating a pyramid.
Or getting into pyramid schemes to date.
What would be a dating pyramid scheme?
It would have to be. It would have to be polyamorous.
It would have to be.
So it's like
You recruit more and more partners to join.
Well,
like
actually, hold on.
increase
No, this is a good.
complicated
This is a good point. This is not at all what this video is about.
What
But
the
this is a good
fuck?
point.
I mean, now it's what
Oh.
it's
A polyamory is very close to a pyramid scheme. So you have like the two people at the top, right, that are like primary partners. So each partner like has like secondary partners who like have their own secondary partners or whatever, like depending on how many people are connected in your relationship. Like the primary partner has like tertiary partners, whatever. Like it's more like cloud kind of.
Yeah,
Like,
because
Nicholas-
like there wouldn't be like some CEO who's holding conferences on a yacht, like with their diamond members being like, "Thank you for like bringing 20,000 new members into this relationship." Like,
Well, that's more like the what was it? The girl that was on Smallville was part of it. There was like a big
Yeah.
thing. That's
Yeah.
a sex cult thing.
it was. Oh,
Polyamory is different.
I forget what her name was.
Chloe, what?
Chloe.
like
Yeah,
Chloe.
the actress who played
On,
Chloe.
that was her name on Smallville. I don't
Yeah.
remember the actress's name.
I totally knew it because I had listened to a few podcast episodes specifically about her involvement in NXVM, whatever,
Yeah, it was like NX something, right?
XCM or whatever.
Also,
Nexium.
Yeah.
the
That's
purple.
a pill. Not
What is
Nexium
this
is a
about
purple
me?
pill. I forget what it treats.
acid
Also,
reflux disease. Funnily enough,
we keep seeing these ads. When,
Allison Mack.
Allison Mack. That's
And
right.
it was
Okay, yeah.
NXIVM, but the V was like
Mm.
supposed to be like, Latin kind of, or like Roman, whatever, styled like U. So it was like Nexium,
okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Also, Abby and I, just speaking of Nexium and just prescription drugs, Abby and I keep seeing ads on Amazon Prime for for like Amazon Prime and Hulu. We get these ads for I forget what there's a few different drugs that we've seen ads for, but it's for moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. And whenever
I
I
get a lot of those ads too.
Yeah.
Which is
So-
interesting considering I don't have moderate or severe or
well, when we see them, I always think, beans. I only have mild plaque psoriasis. There's
yeah,
no medicine
that's
for me. Like it's impossible to treat. Because you almost always see ads for moderate to severe
Yeah.
conditions. You almost never see
well,
things for mild
It's
conditions.
because those ads are like really expensive drugs that aren't covered the same way that normal prescription medicines are.
That makes sense.
And so they're only drugs that you turn to if you have a really severe problem.
So anyway, this wasn't what this episode is about.
not at all. This was supposed to be part 2 of our books episode. Yay!
Look,
If you
we're
say
definitely
wait
talking
one
about
more
books.
thing, one more time, I will reach my hand through the computer and punch you in the throat.
I had this idea just based on the pyramid scheme polyamory thing. I was like, what would, if there was a sphinx that was guarding the polyamorous pyramid, like what would that be? How would
the
it
riddle be?
Yeah, what would the Anyways, I just had that seed of an idea, and I have
Yeah,
no
if you have an idea for a polyamorous pyramid scheme sphinx riddle,
yeah.
please let us know.
In the comments.
No one will have an idea. Just gonna take a wild guess.
The riddle is, what do you call a polyamorous pyramid scheme? We're looking for an answer. We have no idea what to call it.
They just want better branding so they can get more members.
Well, I like the original Sphinx riddle story about like the guy who answers with like a human.
Yeah, like what
Mm.
what crawls on like 4 legs at daytime, like walks on 2, and
In the
like
afternoon and 3 in the evening, and it's supposed to be a human because you're a toddler and then a person and then like you have a cane. But then I've seen that riddle and I've seen the original picture that goes with the riddle, but they changed the riddle so it's like a Pokemon or something. They're like, oh, it's probably one of those new Pokemon. And the Sphinx is like, oh, sure, like, I can't expect you to remember all their names. There's like 800 or now. Like, you may pass.
That's pretty great.
Yep.
So,
Books.
books.
We
So
talked
last we talked about nerding out about books and stuff, but we want to talk today about genre and also writing a bit because
Are we going to talk about the origin of books?
sure, Abby's resident like library science person, so
That's true. That's why she's here.
Yep.
The sole,
She's
the
no other
sole
value.
reason.
also quick question.
Also to stop
Claire-
getting in Pyramid Schemes. Anyway,
Claire, have you ever
Claire's here.
tried your hand at just like freehand writing stuff? Or is most of your writing just in relation to school things? Because I know, because Anthony, Abby, and I have all tried to, write just for fun for things
Oh,
that.
absolutely not.
What is tried to? Hold on a second. Hold on a second.
Okay, you finished a screenplay. Abby
It's a
and
short
I.
story that
that
is written like a screenplay. But anyway, point.
Yeah, I've had, obviously successfully completed short stories because sometimes those are difficult to not finish because they are by nature short stories. At any point at which you stop them, they're kind of done. And I've also written like children's theater type of things, poems, but I have never successfully completed a novel, which I think for most people who are into writing is kind of like the gold standard achievement for calling yourself a writer. Finishing a
It's like a
larger
profession,
project.
yeah,
Yeah.
as opposed to just like a hobby kind of thing.
So
I don't know. I had like a lot of grand ideas for a long time about the high fantasy story I was writing.
I didn't know you were. I know you had
Well,
that
that's
one.
what my D&D campaign is based on.
Ah, okay.
I know I've told you this before. Yeah, the entire D&D campaign is based on a high fantasy story that I've been writing for years. But my problem was that I couldn't have I couldn't write main characters that weren't either like Mary Sue's or that weren't like they were likable and they had flaws, but they were also like strong enough to overcome the challenges. And so I kept writing, with the idea of a main character in mind. And everything else just sort of took shape around not having a main character, but the main character was always there.
So you always had the skeleton of the world
Right.
built.
And so, like, we were playing cards one day at our friend's house, who like is hosting the D&D that we do every Friday, and he was like, "Oh, so like, is anyone interested in?" I think he brought it up originally, but somebody brought it up and was like, "Oh, is anybody interested in playing D&D?" And I was like, and then the idea took shape, and now here we are.
So
Well, there we were.
original question. So Claire, do you have any like pet projects for
Nope.
writing?
I do not write for fun.
Okay.
And that's an interesting thing because there's just, I think so often the idea in writing communities that everyone you meet wants to write something, because I think those communities can often become kind of echo chambery. And so you start to think that just everyone is like that. But then there are, you get reminders that, oh, wait, no. Some people, it's like dragging them across a bed of nails to even just suggest, like, hey, how about you just, like, do you enjoy, like, writing stories for fun?
It's
And
not like I don't particularly hate the idea. I don't feel like I've ever been good at it. But I have so many other creative outlets that I care about
Mhm.
That she cares about more.
Yeah.
that just like it's not something I feel like if I wanted to, I could like try and maybe like I assume it's like anything and you get better with practice, but like it's just not something I'm that interested in.
Yeah.
I don't have like stories that are trapped inside me waiting to get out. Like
Yeah,
people
that's how my little sister is as well. Like, she's written creative writing things when she's had to for class, And a lot of the time she would, call me and ask me for, help with those types of things, especially when she was in later high school and I was in college.
Ah, Patch. The fuck?
Ouch. Okay.
But I've asked her if she ever has any like lingering interest in that, and she's just like, nope, not at all.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned communities because Jacob brought this up off camera about how I've been writing these stories and like writing for so long, and I've never been a part of like a communal like group or like a creative writing like community on like Reddit or whatever. Like I've never like, I don't know. This is probably like getting into therapy territory with like my fear of like rejection and like, oh, your story sucks. Like, but I've never been a part of a community, but I feel like I don't have to because I don't like aspire to publish stories.
Mhm.
Like it would be cool if I did one day, but it's not an ambition that I have really.
yeah, there can definitely be frustrating things about being in writing groups. Like when I was at BYU, I took 8 creative writing classes over, the years there. And a lot of them were the same class over and over again because you could retake it without it being counted as like retaking it. It was just another instance of that class in your like
Okay.
Right.
Okay, I understand.
yeah. And sometimes you just wanted to like shake the person and be like, no, this piece of criticism that you gave makes no sense and is stupid. Or like, I'm allowed to write this way. But then other times you do see, just it's nice to have someone get you out of your own head and say, hey, this thing that you think is obvious isn't, or like this is how it's coming across to a large group of people. And when it's like everyone thinking something, you have to really like, just check your ego and be like, you know what? Maybe I've made an error.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. So a little bit of backstory. The short stories that I have pieces of the third one. The second one is the first draft of the second one is finished, and the first one is in like its sort of final draft stages. Were originally written in the beginning kind of as a joke about our group of friends, Jacob and I's group of friends in high school. Like, what would we do if there was like a zombie attack? And I think it was loosely based on Zombie Survival Guide had just come out, and World War Z.
Yep.
Like, and then Left 4 Dead 2 had just come out recently, like within a year. And so like it was like the height of like zombie hype in the media, and so I was like, And of course I made like all the characters way too overpowered. Especially Jacob's character actually.
I'm just
But
a ninja.
with the exception of Jacob's character actually, I would pass like the drafts of the story around to people, and like I'd be like, oh, like we read this, and every single time everyone that read it was like, oh no, I'm not like this at all, and everyone around them was like, no, you are 100% like this, like you are like this all the time, like this is your character, you are your character.
And the opposite was true for me because I was like, oh, this is me, like spot on. Like I do flips constantly. And everyone's like, no, Jacob, you don't.
Anyway, but so that's sort of the only like foothold in a creative writing community that I've really ever had, but no one else was writing the story. So everyone was just like reading it and editing it and being helpful. What are you doing?
He wants love.
I know.
It's kind of, there's a weird, there's a double-edged sword to writing communities. Sometimes you get caught in the idea of being a writer that you never actually do anything. And so
that's where I was going with that, actually.
So sometimes you get, and so I think part of the reason that you finished is perhaps that you never got the mental fulfillment other than from actually completing it.
And then there's also kind of criticism of creative writing programs Like, I forget the exact one. Oh gosh, it's like the Iowa school or it's one of the Midwestern states that just unexpectedly has this really, really successful and well-known creative writing program. But there are detractors who say that all of that time in that program sands off all the rough edges and makes people churn out fairly samey books. And their style, like their personal style, gets muted because they're all just saying, oh, you should, be like this. And it tends towards a kind of, just average writing style.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. That is further away from where I was going with this. Where I was going when I mentioned the short story before I gave like the backstory information was, shit. No, I just lost it. All right, we'll come back to it if I remember again.
And
That's why we're always interrupting each other, is because I'm like, oh shit, I have this thing to say, and then I forget later.
Yeah. If we hold on to it, it disappears. I
I
had
was
a
trying to catch smoke with your bad hat.
Yeah, that was where my immediate thought went.
I had a terrible thought that just in that it's a bad joke. I was like, whenever
Other warlords in
writing,
other places.
no
live
one
in Africa.
is.
Wait, what?
I was like, when everyone's writing, no one is.
Oh, okay. Syndrome.
Yeah, I adapt that for all of the wrong like,
Yeah.
out
all
of
the things that
things.
don't make sense.
yeah.
Ooh, these are nice.
Okay. So we have kind of what I write is influenced heavily by what I read, which is like a lot of sci-fi and high fantasy stuff. And so I write sci-fi and high fantasy things,
Mm.
I don't write a lot of I don't think I've ever written any horror though. Considering one of my favorite writers is Stephen King. And he actually wrote my favorite book of all time, The Stand, which edges out Jurassic Park just based on how often I read it.
Jurassic Park was your favorite book.
I thought about it though. I've said for years Jurassic Park is my favorite book, but I don't read it as often, even though it is shorter, like much shorter. I read The Stand almost every year, and both books are fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but they're fantastic for different reasons. So if it could be a tie, it would be a tie. But I think The Stand just barely edges out Jurassic Park. But Michael Crichton, writing Jurassic Park, was a fantastic writer, and he actually co-wrote what was the name of that show? ER.
Did he really?
Yeah, he was a co-writer on ER.
That makes sense.
So he has
Yeah.
2 books that are based on like actual. They're fiction, but all of the science in them is based on real medical science. Anyway, but he wrote a lot of sci-fi stuff, and then wrote a pirate fantasy novel that was rather short, but it was very good. I was very surprised. It's kind of sad that he passed away unexpectedly.
I read
I
that.
think
didn't I?
it was unexpected. I don't remember how exactly he died. Don't do that.
I mean,
Anthony didn't expect it.
you didn't expect it, obviously.
Well, I mean, yeah, no, I didn't expect it, but like, I just remember reading about it one day and being like, oh no, like what was wrong?
and
I
then
don't remember thinking about it.
you kept reading the article, and it was like he was killed by the Spanish Inquisition.
No, Jacob.
Bad Jacob.
No one suspects the Spanish.
It's like that joke to me is become like the Monty Python joke. I dread anytime Monty Python is brought up. Not because I don't like Monty Python, but everyone references the same jokes in the same skits every
Yeah.
time.
Dead
Like
parent.
when someone brings up Monty Python or Holy Grail, I'm like, I'm leaving the room. Like I have to leave the room. It's uncomfortable.
The joke that no one ever references enough is how not to be seen.
Oh, is that the one where they are exploding the people?
Yeah.
Yeah. That sketch is very good. So
A lot
something,
of stuff in Life of Brian is not brought up enough, I think.
something I was thinking about was, even though you said that you read a lot of Stephen King, but that you don't write horror, is that there are a lot of I haven't read any Stephen King novels, but I'm familiar with a lot of the themes and
What?
stories.
You've never read a Stephen King novel?
No.
How long have we been friends now? You've never read any of them?
So
Wow. Not even the short stories like Shawshank Redemption or Wow, holy crap.
I'm familiar with a few of his works though, and even though they are horror, there's a very heavy such a heavy supernatural element to them that I find I find the lore around it, like the stuff in The Shining and the stuff in the
Doctor Sleep.
I think those things are I don't know, they're explored enough in their mythos that I think you could describe them as fantasy. And so even if you're like a fantasy writer or buff reading Stephen King, it's still in your theme park.
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I disagree with.
Ballpark. I said theme park. It's ballpark.
Yeah.
You did say theme park. I thought that was
We
on
know
purpose.
we know what you meant.
I thought that was on purpose.
I thought you were gonna
I
say
thought it-
house, but then you said theme park.
I mixed.
I thought it was on purpose because you're
Ballpark
weird,
and
and you would
Wheelhouse?
do that though.
because
You would say that.
it sounds like wheel.
We know what you meant,
Okay.
but I disagree with what you're saying about The Stand, because there's not so much a supernatural element in it, and like someone somewhere is gonna give me shit for this, but there's not really a supernatural element in it other than one character is basically God and one character is basically Satan. Other than that, like everything else is completely normal.
Okay, but you
Normal.
say other than that, like that is not a big.
It's a big issue in the book, but it doesn't really play into the climax of the story. And there are so many other main characters that spend so long coming together that they're not, and one of those characters dies very early. I mean, very early in terms of the story and how long it is. But they spend so long coming together that you sort of forget those characters exist. They're not as relevant until all of the main characters on either side of the good or evil come together, finally, like under their sort of banner of these people are naturally good and these people are naturally assholes. Thank you, Pat.
Yes, the age-old battle.
Well, that's really what it's about is good versus evil and who will win and how will they win.
Yep.
And I think the major takeaway from it is such great evil can only be defeated with another act of great evil. For spoiler purposes, I'm gonna spoil sort of the climax of the story in that there's this kind of crazy character who's like a little he's not like a loose cannon, but he's kind of lost his mind a little bit after wandering in the desert for so long. He goes to an abandoned army base in the desert and finds himself a nuclear weapon and takes it into the camp of the evil camp and just blows it up.
Is the evil camp in Las Vegas?
I want to say it is. I believe it is Vegas.
Well, if there's any cities to nuke.
Is it? I saw.
Here on the Dr. Z show, we support nuking Las Vegas. Not sponsored.
I was just imagining that as like a little pin, like Las Vegas.
And the good side is in Colorado, Boulder, I believe, Boulder, Colorado.
I was
Anyway.
like, Italics, Colorado.
What do you write, Jacob?
Right.
Force the movement of the story.
It's
Mostly puns that he then inflicts upon
That's
the world.
damn truth.
As we all know.
yes. admittedly, I was just talking, a few of my book idea characters were just puns. And there's the name of one of the C's in the novel that I've written the most of, haven't finished a first draft, is there's like a country called Layton, and then there's a C near it for like latency. I was just thinking of just like, anyways, they're puns that have like no like comedic value. It's just to like make words out of other words.
Do they have relevance to the story?
No, I just wanted to put them in there. So okay, we'll have to do jump cut. So
Jump cut.
Yep.
That's unfortunate because the conversation that we just had was great, but you'll never know what it was.
you'll never know.
They'll never know.
Secret DLC, secret backstory DLC.
Secret tunnel. So anyway, so Jacob, does anything influence your writing, or just your need to be ridiculous?
Just
Mostly okay. Oddly enough,
Fantasy, lots of anime.
Static Shock has influenced my desire for like storytelling and other things probably more than anything, oddly enough. So the Static Shock TV show, grew up with it, loved,
You
Is-
like that? I mean, you like that show a lot, like a
Yeah.
lot,
yeah.
which is fine. Like it was a good show.
So the thing is, with Static Shock, there's a ton of different powers, and all the characters are teenagers, basically. And I think the reason that influenced me so much is because growing up, I could identify with the struggles of the main character. It also looked into a lot of different issues of race and friendship and expectations in your society and other things. And while I personally wasn't struggling with those in the way that the characters were, it still felt very, very real and important.
Yeah.
So I think those things combined together, just the very relatable writing, on top of just all of the crazy different powers that people had, really influenced me, because I'm just a powers and lore junkie. Like I love
For real though.
The
I
amount
love-
we talked about comics and everything off camera, like forever.
yeah.
And even on camera, when you've gone off on like wild tangents about, getting crazy powers.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So for instance, when in Legend of Korra, when Zahir kills someone by suffocating them using airbending,
Right.
that was just, I thought that was awesome. Like, not that I'm like, yeah, people need to die or anything like
Yeah,
that.
it was horrifying, but it was interesting
Jake is
that
an
they
advocate
did that with the lore.
Gruesome murder.
I like when people take, I don't know, things to their logical like limits or edges for.
Well, they did that,
the
and they
first-
did that in Last Airbender with the blood bending.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And with also like the plant bending in the swamp area.
mhm.
There were
Yeah,
water.
and sandbenders as well.
Yeah.
Another thing was also with Static Shock. I've just always really liked electricity as a
As an electrical engineer.
as a power
Shocking.
set and everything. So, which is kind of odd because Spider-Man and the Flash. I've always said that those were my favorite superheroes out of the comics. And
Well, the
neither-
Flash, because he's like the most overpowered character in the
Yeah.
entire universe, and the amount of things he can do with his powers.
So your goal in every video game is gotta go fast.
Yeah, I don't speed run, but I just want to be very fast.
And you will spend as much time as necessary maximizing your character speed.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's becoming a point of contention. It's
Mostly,
too fast, I can't move.
I was just trying to get him to wear armor in Breath of the Wild, and then I had to be like, "Hey, if you upgrade this set, it boosts your night speed."
And then I was like,
So what you're telling me is I'm not going to get off on a big tangent on this until this weekend, I promise. But if you ever play Mech Warrior with me, you'll have to be a light mech so you can be
Yes.
fast. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
But back to Static Shock, the like character that I've had in my like head for a while, who's the main character or one of the main characters of the book that I'm working on. I was really interested in people with electricity powers doing mind control because of everything in the human body is controlled with electrical synapses, and so I thought that like that would be cool. It would be insane because it's so like precise.
Yeah.
But
Typically, people get, when people are handed superpowers, it's more of a hammer than it is like,
Hammer.
yeah, like, it's like you can bash things, but you can't, like, fix a computer with it.
yeah,
Like, it's
Unless
not
you're
a
forged, you
precise-
have the ability to build any type of
That's
machine.
true, but it's not a precise tool mode, and the control that you have over it is typically not. You don't have enough time in the human lifespan to develop the control needed to get to those extreme limits of that power.
Yeah.
Disagree.
I'm saying that's often
Cyborg.
how it is in those stories, and how it's harder to properly show someone getting just the minuscule kind of levels of power,
Okay.
like control they need.
Fair. So Jacob's writing is not influenced by reading. That's what we are learning.
I do consume a lot of media. There's an author, Brandon Sanderson. His writing style, he has a ton of different power sets, and he has very specific rules for all of them. And so by setting up the rules, the way that the characters solve their problems is always really satisfying because he, sets their limitations, and then, when they do something with their powers, it's not because they're just strong, it's because they are smart.
Okay.
So
Fair.
seeing his writing definitely made me be like, oh, okay, like someone, this is exciting for me because this is what I always want in the media that I've been consuming all my life, whether it's books or movies, TV shows, video games, etc.
As I've evolved our characters, the sort of through the progression of the story, it became less about like, oh, we're just gonna shoot everything, and more about like, okay, we need to stop and we need to think, like, what's the next move? How can we go about this like safely and in a smart way? And part of that is on purpose because of the maturity of the characters growing up, but it's also partially on purpose because because of talking to you so much about that kind of character and that kind of writing.
Yeah, and I went to a ton of writing panels whenever I go to conventions for anime or Comic-Con kind of things. I always go to the writing panels, which like I go for cosplay and for writing panels most of the time. Like occasionally I'm like, oh, that's cool, this guy's gonna be there, but it's always so expensive to get signatures, and I'm not super beholden to most
I did that for Buffy.
Yeah, to most actors, but
I got Spike's signature and had a nice conversation with him. He is a very nice man.
I don't like Joss Whedon, but we won't get into that again. Anyway,
So
so
impact your love of like James Marsters, the actor who plays Spike. He is not Joss Whedon.
or easy.
he wrote Buffy. Point.
Conspiracy theory.
Yes. No. Point. Abby, what do you write, and what influences your writing?
Well, I think a lot of the children's books that I grew up reading, and then like picture books to like chapter books to everything else. It was a lot of subversive content. Like one of my favorite picture books was The Stinky Cheese Man and Other Fairly Stupid Tales, because it's not like I didn't have a lot of I mean, we did have just like a book of this is Mother Goose's rhymes and stuff.
Right.
And that's like the source material of that. But we had a lot of twists on familiar stories and concepts and things.
But like acceptable twists, not like
Yeah,
Grimm
no.
Brothers Wizard of Oz or whatever, which is like horrifying if you've ever read it. A very adult
Yeah.
point.
No, but like I read lots of, and just lots of things that were satire upon or twists on various things. And so, like Jacob is with power structures and everything, I am with tropes.
Okay.
I like to take a good trope and twist it, or explore, like, like what are the corners of this story that haven't been fully explored.
Okay.
And
I'm sort of also, I have to admit, I'm filing this information away. If you ever manage to read They Will Eat You, because it is a very trope heavy. It plays on the zombie tropes a lot.
But you did that on purpose.
But I did that on correct. I did that on purpose, but it doesn't twist them very far. So anyway, sorry.
But I write mostly urban fantasy. So it's grounded in the real world pretty much. So it's not like a mystical land that has never like actually existed. It's typically modern day. Like if there is an alternate history, it hasn't diverged very much from existing things. I try to have characters who are fairly grounded in norms, but then there'll be something weird like, this girl has like a dead-end job or something, but she also happens to have like an unfortunate contract with a demon that she summoned from another plane when trying to, like,
No, that's interesting. No, I think that's interesting. Like very simple, like a very simple story that you're not interested in until you find out, like, oh wait, there's a demon involved. Like, why is he here? Like, what is he doing?
The contrast is what makes it funny, because like it's the whole thing of that's why people always make jokes about like what do like the monsters in the D&D world play. Do they play like offices and cubicles? Like
that makes sense. No, that makes sense. I understand that.
But I do like to have a bit of a romance component, but mostly I like to have a humor component, because I'm all about humor and snappy dialogue.
I mean, that's why you married Jacob. The
Yep.
sole reason, right there.
Only reason. But I read a lot of British humorists, like Terry Pratchett is like the best, even though he writes a much more like fully like fantasy style, where it is on. But even still, Discworld is not made to feel like a swooping landscape. It's a dingy city that's got most of the businesses and things that we would expect. Just like it's got the fantasy TV industry, it's got just the fantasy version of most of the things that exist. Like there's cameras, there's telegraph systems, but they all just are made steampunk style with a different technological like source of it. It's all like magic based instead of actual other things.
Electricity or mechanical components. I hesitate to mention this again because I know we mentioned it on the first books episode, even though it was kind of short. But I feel like both of you would like Yahtzee Crawshaw's writing, probably for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I know last time I mentioned Jam, which is a book about an apocalypse that involves jam. But he's writing this story, and the second book just released. The first book was We'll Save the Galaxy for Food. And the second book is We'll Destroy the Galaxy for Cash. And it's about like this character who's like, he like starts out kind of with nothing, but he's a big hero character. And a lot of his books they explore like kind of what Abby was talking about they explore like the tropes, but there's always a little twist, and all of his books are funny. Like he's a comedic writer. That's what he does. That's what his YouTube channel is about. Like I think he's hilarious.
Yeah.
I will put him up on a pedestal. I'm trying to think of a word and I can't really think of it. The only other thing I can say is to sing his praises.
Evangelize.
Yeah, and it's not that, I don't know if it's that strong, but like
That is the word.
he's great, and I think both of you would be interested in him. He does zero punctuation on YouTube, which is what he's most known for.
Yeah.
Works for The Escapists. No, like, kind of we're not like sponsored. Yeah, sponsorship, that's the word. We're not sponsored in any way by any of that, but
I don't know what viewers you think are gonna say that your show
hey,
is.
you
This
never
is what
know.
I've been
You
saying.
never know.
Nobody's
Okay.
like, oh, they're sponsored. Watch out, sponsored content. Nobody's saying.
Sellouts.
If we were sponsored, we'd have like a green screen or something in the background.
We'd have a dedicated editor who would do weird things and do close-ups on our faces.
Claire just does.
I
weird
just
things.
haven't been on camera at all.
Yeah, I keep
Yeah.
telling you, like, move closer.
Your chair is all the way. I literally.
My chair
can't
is
get
very
closer.
wide. Anyway, so what do you read, Claire, since you do not write?
Nothing right now, unfortunately. Yeah, I know. For shame. It's amazing having a job and a half that you only get paid one salary for.
Here we go.
I read a lot of salary proposal, but bargaining proposals right now. No. Okay. In all seriousness, let's see.
Well, and I think that real life experience can, sway your kinds of creative like outlets and things. Like the character in my demon summoning story has my old job because it's a boring and terrible job. And sometimes you want to be able to tell people about how boring and terrible your job is without just complaining.
But
That's
you're the
fair.
but you're the expert on it, so you know how to write the character that is you, but
Yeah.
involving demon.
But you can make it funny and have people actually care about how dumb and boring your job is, which is something that everyone wants to talk about, but no one ever wants to hear about from other people.
Right. No, that's a good. Maybe maybe
But
I
the
should
character
write,
is you. Jacob is the demon.
No, Jacob is not the demon.
Maybe I should write just to vent about my job.
They're rewriting.
No, but I enjoy, like, I don't know what the name for this genre is, but I always enjoyed Little Women and Eight Cousins and stuff like that.
About big families.
Cheaper by the dozen. Was that ever a book?
It was.
Just a terrible movie and a very good movie. That's the other thing, is like a lot of my media consumption is also like musicals and like music, like reading music, being
teacher.
a musician.
Shocking.
Well, not just being a music teacher, but like where some people would sit down and read a book, I might sit down at the piano and sight read. Like, you know what I mean?
I can't read for crap at all, and I've never been able to, despite many years of music lessons.
Same.
Well, it's like a specific skill that you have to practice like anything else. So, anyways, and I like sci-fi fantasy stuff. I don't.
I mean, liking Star Wars
yeah.
leads into that, but I don't know that you've ever read Star Wars.
Yeah, no, I absolutely have.
Okay, I don't know.
Do you
Like
see
I
how
said,
that
I don't know.
fits
Like I said, I don't know.
over
And she could sight read the John Williams score. There you go.
Ah,
I like inspirational novels. There was a or actually really oftentimes they're autobiographies, or they might be like slightly fictionalized autobiographies. So like we read this book my freshman year of college. They had this like all the freshmen had to read this one book, and there was like a symposium thing, and the author came to talk to us.
it was The Outsiders.
No, it was
What
called
was-
Just Don't Fall. And it's about this guy who, like,
Balls.
I don't remember if he was born without legs or born without one leg or lost his legs to cancer at age 8 or something like that. And then he became like an Olympic skier. Yeah.
Which you like skiing, so I'm
Yeah.
sure you were interested in that.
But not the guy with no legs who became a famous athlete, then killed his girlfriend, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yes,
that's
not
correct.
that. Not that. And I also I can't
That's a
think
different
of
kind of
another
inspiration.
I can't think of another word to describe this category, but like self-help books.
Oh no, that's the name for the category.
Yeah, it's when you say self-help books, I feel like that sounds bad, but like books on personal finance and books on like
Books on how to improve your life.
organization and like I enjoy, even if I
Life
might not
improvement.
follow any of the things in it, I just enjoy reading them.
Life
Marie
improvement
Kondo.
And
books.
recipes. I like reading cookbooks for fun. So
Have you read
Crash
Smith in the Kitchen cookbooks?
no.
Deb
Okay.
Perel.
Do they have YouTube videos?
I don't think she does, but I know that she writes columns for the Bon Appetit magazine. But
Oh, okay. I'm familiar with the name.
yeah, Smith in the Kitchen. She has a blog. She's
Uh-huh.
like a Jewish lady in New York City with a tiny kitchen, and she's just always like, she's one of the few people who has the long thing in the recipe that's worth reading.
Yeah. So I get I actually subscribe to New York Times Cooking for like, I don't know, $5 a month or something. And they send daily, like weekday emails as well as like once a week emails. What?
Is it a 7?
Oh. With recipes, but it's like a narrative that is sort of about the recipes and sort of about other things. And then the way the recipes are written and the introductions to them are really enjoyable to read a lot of the time. So
You have to read the narrative, and it is the recipe.
sometimes, well, he does
That's
no recipe.
safer.
The guy who writes the main newsletter does no recipe Wednesdays, and he's like, yeah, just throw this, that, and the other together and like roast on a baking sheet. And it's in like a paragraph form.
One of the things that I like reading recipes is when reading like someone's, making some classic version from, I'm talking about Smith in the Kitchen here, but she will take some recipe that she has to adapt for some reason, maybe because she doesn't have enough ingredients or because just personal taste, and then she'll talk about like why she decided to add this much salt or something. And then sometimes you get the idea like, like what she is doing is something that would be gross if I did it. So you can just understand. So it gives you the reasons for the quantities in a way that is educational.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
That makes sense.
And Patch is just
He's
we're
he's
so
a
He is
liquid.
living his best life.
He is a liquid, as we've talked about before on the show.
Are you sure he's not part cat?
No,
he's
he is
most
100%
definitely
part cat.
part cat. 100% part cat, dear.
Yes, 100% part cat.
50% of the time, 100% of the time.
So anyway, this has been educational and fulfilling. Claire will not want to watch this episode back because she is in it and
Yeah. No, I
was
already
present
lived it
during
once.
recording, so she hates doing that.
Well,
I'll
just
have to
don't
watch this
the
episode
last 10
back
minutes.
No, wait, you can't
to
talk
jump
at the
cut
same time.
it. Go ahead.
Just don't watch the last 10 minutes. Because she was hiding the rest of the episode.
But I was still here. I was in the room and like listening and occasionally.
Yeah, you're in the room because the room is our apartment. We
We
only
live in
have one room. Anyway,
Being poor is great.
it's not being poor. It's
Yeah,
saving
like-
money.
1-bedroom apartment over here.
And we can't afford
It's a donut.
more than that.
Anyway, point. So, that is bringing the end of this episode to a close.
Yeah.
Well, it's, you know how we close the episodes. It's very
Yeah.
like, oh, we'll get there when we get there.
We're starting to.
We're starting to be done.
Let it die a slow death. You inject the, opioids into it and pet its hair as it goes.
On a sad note, my parents' cat passed away yesterday.
Aw.
Oh
From a stroke.
Was it
Because I
Gypsy?
just found out in the beginning of the recording. My
Oh.
mother texted me, and I was like,
Sad.
oh dear.
Oh no.
Was it Gypsy or the other one?
Jenny,
Jenny. Okay.
the older one.
Sad.
Sad.
Do you either finish your podcast early or you live long enough to watch it become a live stream.
Point. Next episode, we will be doing a look back, and I promise I will try to not talk about how great MechWarrior 5 is the entire episode.
Only
Only-
most of it.
Most of it.
Only 80% of the time.
It's fucking great. Okay. But this is how much I love you guys, is I will do podcast and sacrifice precious moments of
That he-
time that I could be spending playing MechWarrior. What?
Literally, when he was like calling you to set up the episode, he pressed the Skype button, like, and it started ringing, and it kept ringing, and then it stopped, and then he pressed it again, and it like kept ringing, and it stopped because you weren't picking up. And like the third time, he was like, "Ugh, I'm wasting valuable MechWarrior time."
This is factual.
Great.
Factual statement.
Okay. Well,
True story.
do you have to end? We gotta go.
Yeah, and so we will see Brenna this weekend for our. Well, we'll see her because she'll be on the call,
Review.
but she will be doing our year in review with us, and we will review the good, the bad, and the really, really terrible things,
All the races.
I was hoping for the good, the bad, and the ugly.
and the racist things. No,
Unintentionally racist.
mostly reviewing our look ahead and how right we were or how wrong we were, because we only care about ourselves.
True.
Yeah. I mean,
We'll
it's
see you guys-
2020, the year of perfect vision, so.
Right, correct. Barbara Walters, and this is 2020. We'll see you guys next time on the Dr. Z Show.
Adios.